You ever been laughed at for something you carried with pride? I don't mean light teasing or folks not understanding your dreams. I mean folks looking dead in your face in a room full of people that claim to love the Lord and calling you out like your dignity ain't worth the air they breathe. If you don't know that feeling, bless you. But I do. It was the third Sunday in July. I remember 'cause it was Mission Sunday, which meant half the church got extra dressed up, and the other half stayed home pretending they were watching the live stream but actually cooking early. We was halfway through service when I felt it creeping, like air before a thunderclap, cloud of judgment drifting down my row. I'd brought the chicken spaghetti to the potluck that day, same as I always did, and I wore my blue skirt, the soft denim one with the stitched hem, matched with a white blouse and my quiet little church pin on my chest, had my Bible in my lap, tabs peeking out like ribbons from a gift. I wasn't trying to be nobody but myself. But try telling that to Sister Laverne. Now, I hadn't seen Laverne in years. Not since she sent her baby girl off to Howard and stopped taking my calls about the church food bank. She walked in last minute, heels clacking on that polished tile like a metronome for malice. She didn't wave, didn't nod. She just sat behind me and leaned forward the second we stood for offering. "I see you still wearin' them thrift store shoes," she said. "Broke church ladies still got enough pride to show up, huh?" Just like that. In the sanctuary, while the usher was halfway down the aisle holding the plate. Now, I know you're probably wondering why I didn't turn around and say something sharp. Why I didn't gather her with scripture and a stare. I did turn around, real slow. But I didn't raise my voice, didn't flinch. I just looked her dead in the eye and smiled. And yes, my shoes was from the thrift, but they weren't dirty. They were shined that morning with what little polish I had left in the bottle from last year's Easter. And yes, I ain't got closets full of suits like some folks, but I own peace, sleep at night. And if you ask me, that's luxury. I turned back toward the front, clenching my bulletin just enough to crease the corner. She didn't say nothing else, but the damage was done. Not to me, no. My armor's too seasoned for that, but to the room. The air changed. Pews full of people that had heard my name prayed over someone's hospital bed, now looking sideways like shame was contagious. That's the thing, ain't it? Folks like to judge visible struggle. Don't matter how much love you pour into a place, one whisper of lack, and suddenly you less. I sat through the rest of the service without blinking. Didn't clap when the choir hit that old hymn I used to lead. Didn't say amen when Deacon Josiah tried to bring fire with his help is on the way sermon. Because what happens when the help was always you, but nobody noticed till they thought you broke? After benediction, while folks was hugging necks and passing peppermint, I walked into the back kitchen to get my Tupperware. The chicken spaghetti was picked clean. Not even a corner crust lift. Funny thing, the one who called me broke had 2 servings of it on her plate. You tell me what's broke about that? I walked out with my tray tucked under my arm, my head up like it was topped with a Bible crown. But inside, baby, it burned. I'd carried that church on my back for years, washed its communion cups, bought juice when funds were short, helped paint the nursery, paid someone else's light bill from my pension, and never asked for applause. But that day made me want to remind folks. I got home to silence. My granddaughter Ania was at Joyene's house for the weekend. Thank God. I didn't want her asking why her grandma rubbed her eyes before she even made it to the front porch. My living room was still warm from morning sun, smelling like lemon cleaner and almond oil. My couch sagged like it knew too many confessions, and the picture on the wall, the one of my late husband in his service suit, tilted slightly to the left. I didn't straighten it. Instead, I walked over to the kitchen drawer, pulled out a stack of letters, and sat at the table. They were updates. From the scholarship fund. See, the part don't nobody know, not the church folk, not the gossipers, not even Laverne. Is that I've been funding tuition for Black girls graduating from underfunded schools for the past 11 years? Quietly, anonymously. Started with my tax return and a prayer. Then some small fundraising. Then a cleaning contract turned into a contractor recommendation. Before I knew it, them angel wings turned into wings for somebody else. I never put my name on the website. I never posted about it. I just wrote the checks and kept walking. But now my spirit called for something different. I opened one of the envelopes. Inside was a note from the new director of South Grove County Educational Development Program. Miss Langston, we are so grateful for your ongoing donations through the anonymous benefactor line. However, we'd like to ask permission to honor your name during this year's Community Scholarship Banquet. Your contributions have now funded 19 students. 19. I stared at the number for a long while. 19 backpacks. 19 tuition payments. 19 dreams that ain't get laughed at during altar call. They wanted my permission. And I thought about it long and hard. Part of me was tempted to say no. To just keep letting the room believe I was fading, poor, tired. But I ain't dying with my work in the dark no more. I picked up my phone. Scroll, tap, dial. Hello. The director answered, all chipper. This is Ora Mae Langston, I said. Go ahead and use my name this year. Miss Langston, I said, put my name on the program. Capital letters, full. Don't abbreviate. She exhaled like joy finally got permission to dance. Yes, ma'am, we sure will. The event is going to be beautiful. I smiled, staring out the window into my little garden, petunias leaning into the sun. It already is. I hung up and leaned back. You ever had a moment where you felt your ancestors clap for you? Like they watching from a balcony, humming, keep on making a way while you rise. That's what it felt like. Now, let me back up a bit, 'cause I need you to understand where all this really started. The scholarship fund didn't just sprout out of spite or pride. Nah, baby. It was born out of something deeper. Pain, hope, memory, and church silence that wrapped around my grief like wax paper. Y'all still with me? If you hearing this and thinking this feel too familiar, drop a thought in the comments. Tell me if you've ever been called out unjustly in a place you called home. Because I know I'm not the only one been dressed down by somebody who barely paid for their tithe envelope. Hold on to your heart now. 'Cause the story I'm about to take you through next, it don't just explain how my name ended up on that scholarship fund. It explains the girl I lost who dared to dream before this town could crush it. Yes, that girl. The one she thought she shamed out of me with 4 little words inside a house of praise. Broke church lady. She didn't know that phrase was never a curse. It was a calling. And baby, I picked it up. You ever sit in a quiet kitchen, sun low in the window, with your hands resting palm up like maybe if you charge still enough, your purpose might land in M? That was me. Right after the call, I stayed in that chair a long time. Just breathing. Old air, new air. Air that ain't asked for permission to stay long, but tasted strong enough for change. My fingers still held that envelope, but my mind walked backward. Back to the start of all this. Back to the first envelope. Her name was Brielle. Cute little thing. Brown curls, nervous giggle, sharp tongue when she got comfortable. I first met her when I was volunteering at New Crossing Academy, scanning applications for the chicken dinner fundraiser they put on every October. She must have been 16, real quiet, but her essay hushed me right up. I want to go to school so I don't have to clean toilets like my mom. Hurt and hope, wrapped neat in 500 words. That line stuck to my ribs. Not because I'd never heard kids say silly things, but because I was her mama. At least once. I cleaned toilets for folks that didn't bother to learn my name. I smiled through holiday shifts. I ironed uniforms from donation bags just to make sure my own children never knew what hungry felt like, even if they sure tasted it. But I never wanted my grandbabies to carry that shame too. So I pulled aside the principal. Told her, give me that girl's senior fee invoice. Quietly. I paid it in full. Didn't put my name on nothing. That was the first one. One turned into 4 the next year. Then 7 2 years after. Turned out churchwomen with quiet dignity and unmatched budgeting skills can do a whole lot when you stay out of Macy's and spend your Saturdays clipping coupons like the Sunday paper with scripture. I built a fund inside a jar first. Then inside a coffee can. Then, Lord help me, I got a Square Pay account. Next thing I knew, I had a tiny web page and people from all over sending small blessings for Black girls that don't get seen in gifted education. But the thing is, I didn't want praise. I just wanted to make it easier for them to sit in rooms they didn't know they were worthy of. Let me ask you, you ever pay a bill that wasn't yours and sleep better anyway? 'Cause baby, I did. There's no rest like knowing somebody else's mountain just got flattened with your shovel. But this ain't just about me handing out help. This is about how that help circled back, disguised in lace, lipstick, and a lopsided smirk inside a house of God. Because the truth is, me and Laverne, we go back. All the way back. Before red heels and dig-me dresses. Before she learned to curl her tongue like it came from a crown. Back then, we both sang in the youth choir. Both tried out for Miss Second Sunday pageant. Both dated boys that swore they'd be deacons. Difference is, I grew up and started working. She married money. Or thought she did. I remember the first time I saw her in one of those boutique hats. Big rimmed thing with feathers like she meant to rebuke pigeons. I said, "Girl, were you going wearing a peacock on your head?" She said, "Wherever they treat women like jewels." I said, "Or wherever they buy baubles with bounced checks." She ain't speak to me for 5 Sundays after that. But then came the parking lot fight in front of the church, her husband screaming, neighbors peeking over hedges, her mascara halfway down her chin. That was the day she stopped floating and started stomping. Laverne started judging women who reminded her too much of her past, including me. Now don't get me wrong. I got enough room in my heart for broken women. But when they try to cut you with a blade wrapped in lipstick and offering envelopes, that's when I back up. I never forgot the way she smirked when I had to borrow a ride home after my old Chevy died in the church lot. Never forgot how she leaned in once like she was gonna whisper a prayer and said, "You always been too humble." You ever hear shade sound spiritual? That was Laverne's gift. But what she ain't know was that the banquet this year? This wasn't just another event with chicken breast and baked macaroni. This event. This one was mine. Let me show you how God works. That same week she mocked me, I got an email from the scholarship committee. One of the new awardees had turned in her file late. Nobody caught the name until it was verified. And when I opened the spreadsheet, I saw it. Madison D. Hemmings. D was for Denise. Denise Hemmings was Laverne's sister's baby. Laverne, the same woman who called me broke during communion. Same woman who laughed when I tripped walking up the choir loft. That child? Receiving the Ora Mae Langston Educational Fund tuition grant? You tell me if God don't send full circle invites with embroidered twist endings. Little Madison. Strata student, band, working weekends at the nursing home. Quiet girl. Always says, "Excuse me," even when you bump into her. I knew the name, but never made the connection. Meanwhile, Laverne out here throwing shade underneath stained glass, and her own blood being lifted by the woman she tried burying in debt and assumption. Now I was faced with a choice. Do I pull the name? Do I resend the scholarship? Do I do what she did? Whisper insults wrapped in good intentions. I sat with it for a whole 2 days. And on the third day, can't make this up, my granddaughter Ania came into the room holding her math workbook, sat down next to me, and said, "You always nice, even when people mean. Grandma, why?" I asked, "Somebody being mean to you?" She said, "No, I just noticed." And that right there, that's what sealed it. Because I don't want her learning clapbacks before she learns character. I don't want her soaking up spite like inheritance. I want her drenched in grace, even when it costs. So I kept the name. I submitted the program, ordered the table cards, and when my name shows up on that printout, "I'ma wear the same shoes," she sneered at. Clean as kindness, quiet as favor. 'Cause when Madison walks across that stage, and Laverne sees the donor's name, she'll have to sit in the holiness of her own echo. But before we even get to that ceremony, there's still something y'all need to know. Because while I was orchestrating all this quiet redemption, life had one more twist already rolling down the hill. The night before the banquet, I got a knock on my front door. I wasn't expecting nobody, but standing there, hair slicked down, keys in her hand, shoulders slumped like surrender done took over, was Laverne's sister, Denise herself. And what she'll come to tell me changed everything I thought I knew about pride and legacy and the power of hush love. You ever have a whole decade rewritten in a single sentence? Hold on to that question. Because what she said will explain why none of this is just about money. It's about blood that whispers through bone, and names that never stop echoing. She didn't say much right away. Just stood there in that little beam of porch light, eyes puffy, breath shallow, clutching her keys like she wasn't sure if she meant to come in or just swing by shame first and leave. I tilted my head. "Denise?" She nodded. I stepped aside. Wordless, invitation humble. You ever had truth walk into your house wearing perfume it probably borrowed from lament? That was her. She sat at my kitchen table like her spine forgot how to hold her up. Looked older than the last time I saw her, which was, mercy, maybe 6 years back? She'd come to drop off flyers for the local PTA bake sale. I bought 3 lemon squares, even though they tasted like old secrets. This time, her spirit didn't smell like lemon. It smelled like vinegar and apology. She barely waited for the tea kettle before her words started spilling. "I found the scholarship letter," she said. "The one from your fund." I nodded slow but didn't answer. Let her keep wringing her heart out before it crusted. Her eyes blinked fast. "Red rims? Did you pick Madison because she's family?" I raised my eyebrows. "No, I picked her because she's a blossom growing out of concrete. Didn't even know she was yours until the file was processed." She choked on a breath like my answer hurt more than it helped. I still remember. I still remember that time you carried me home from choir rehearsal when my asthma acted up. You remember that? Course I do, I said, pouring hot water over the ginger I'd sliced thin. You was 12. You got dizzy trying to outsing Laverne in soprano. She laughed, a short, brittle sound. I always envied you, she said. Your steadiness. Even when y'all didn't have nothin', you walked like God himself, whispered you across the floor. That about took me out. 'Cause I ain't felt whispered in a long time. I stirred honey in her cup. She reached out but didn't drink it. Then she looked up. What I'm about to say, I think you already know. But maybe I gotta say it anyhow for peace. I took the chair across from her. Tight creak under me. Go ahead, I said gently. She stared at the table, fingers picking at the edge of her sleeve like Truth liked to play dress-up as nervous. Madison's middle name is Ora? The room got real still. At first I thought I misheard her, or maybe she meant it metaphorically. But she didn't flinch. Laverne didn't want me to tell you, she said. Said it would give you the wrong idea. Said I was planting guilt. You aren't? She said, you already had your grief. That digging it back up wouldn't change a thing. Now my breath got tight. Voice shallow. What are you saying, Denise? She winced. I named her after y'all's girl. And my chest cracked. Not like glass, but like a porch step. Quiet, but foundational. Y'all, I need you to understand something. Before Maddie, before Marcus, before the church fund, I had a daughter. One I ain't raised. Her name was Ora Danielle. She was born when I was far too tired, and the world was far too cruel. I was 15. My own daddy didn't look at me for 6 months after. Gave her up to the system 3 days after I gave birth. If it sound cold, it was but survival. Don't wait for warm hands. I used to write letters I never mailed. Once, stitching baby booties, I'm no longer sure. Pain as wallpaper, you live with it, decorating around it. Her name was a song only sang by my rib cages. Folks thought Marcus my first, but he was just the beginning. Marcus witnessed my love leaving in her place. Not out of absence, but remembrance. I put everything in him, not wanting to lose him, but remembering him. When she named her girl after me, my heart struggled to hold the weight. At the window, I stared into the darkness of the garden, feeling the garden lights dance across dewy basil leaves. Whispered, "Did you know her?" Nodded, briefly. Youth outreach at Montgomery House. The world caught her before the diploma. She passed by an overdose in winter. Laverne didn't want to be seen there, but I held her hand. That was a named resurrection. A spiritual birthright to reclaim who I was before the world weighed me too heavy. By that mirror, in front of the bathroom sink, she had become something else entirely. The whispers of a whisper, Ora Danielle, echoed in my mind. The sonnet of sorrow had become a poem of life, full of love, forgiveness, and hope. But not of just one mother's sorrow, but of all the mothers broken by this world. This was not about saving face, but about exposing the roots of this world, showing how deep I would go to save and embrace them all. And that's why, without any of the answers, I stood in front of the banquet print proof, with the paper in my hand and pen in my mouth. It's not for me, it's for everyone, it's for everything. Clutching her program so tight, the paper curled at the corners. And when she saw that name, let's just say, you don't need lightning to see somebody struck. But we'll get to that part. Right now, you and I, we just need to sit with this moment. This stillness. Because before a legacy lifts, it anchors. And before a name floats, it kneels. I ironed my blouse 3 times that morning. Not because it needed it, exactly. But because my hands needed peace. You ever stand in front of a mirror not to see yourself, but just to steady the soul? That was me. The banquet was set to start at 11 a.m. sharp in the Fellowship Hall of First Unity Church. Place had been repainted in that fake almond cream that all event halls had. Somewhere between polite beige and trying too hard. When we pulled up, Joylene was already there, clipboard in hand, brows furrowed like being early gave her heartburn. "You're late, Ma," she said, even though we were right on time. "I expect nothing less from you," I smiled, holding the envelope with the final checks. Ania followed a few steps behind me, holding my purse like she was already somebody's secretary. Real proud posture. Little black flats scuffed on one toe. Breathe in that image, baby. 3 generations under one crown of grace. Inside the banquet room, round tables were dressed in white overlays, centerpieces of plastic ivy that someone had definitely tried to fluff, and folding chairs with the silver ribbons just a touch off center. It wasn't fancy. It was perfect. Folks started rolling in quick. Church members, donors, parents holding programs with trembling hands. I overheard one say, "I done prayed over this girl every single night for the last 12 years. And she actually gonna walk a college campus in the fall." That sound, that trembling joy. Ain't no designer fragrance sweeter and that. I took my seat at table 2. Intentionally not the head table. I ain't never needed distance to earn reverence. The MC, Brother Quincy, always overdressed and underprepared, welcomed everyone. Mic squeaking, voice booming, suit sleeve a little frayed at the wrist. He listed the sponsors. Local banks, a law office, a funeral home. Then he cleared his throat. And finally, we honor a name that means something very different this year. He nodded toward the screen. Slide changed. Black background. White text. Presented in honor of the Ora Mae Langston Educational Fund. In memory of Ora Danielle. Even joy got quiet when grief walks in and starts clapping. The whole room shifted their attention onto me like I wrote the gospel. I smiled, soft, didn't stand. Just pressed one hand to my heart. And in that moment, Laverne took her program and folded it slow. Real slow. She turned toward me across the room, not with hostility. With recognition? That kind of look somebody gives when the thing they feared turns out to be the person who fed them. I didn't blink. Let it land. She mouthed something, and although I couldn't hear it, I didn't need to. It seemed unfamiliar, but I nodded once, accepting it all. There was no room for pity or collapse, just a steady presence. Madison was seated 2 tables behind me, wide-eyed with her hair styled into a puff and a pink blazer that seemed like a delightful find. When her name was called, she stood and approached the podium. Her eyes scanned the room, appearing vulnerable, but when she found my face, she began her speech with newfound courage. "I know a lot of y'all don't know me. I used to hate that, but now I see it as a blessing. Growing in the background taught me to observe and listen. And I've been listening to Miss Ora Mae since I was little, even when I didn't know who she was. Now I know." She paused, her hands trembling. "And I promise," she continued, "to make her name proud." The whole room stood, but I remained seated, letting legacy shine without my presence overshadowing it. After the ceremony, people lined up to greet, offering hugs, envelopes, and sometimes apologies, wrapped in shallow smiles. But Laverne didn't join them at first. I noticed her pacing outside, just beyond the glass doors, clutching her elbow as if to steady herself. When I finally stepped outside, she was waiting near the parking lot, having swapped her heels for flats. I stopped a few feet away, and we both stayed silent, letting the air speak for us. Carrying the faint aroma of coleslaw and the warmth of summer on blacktop, she moved closer, her lips parting without words. I let the silence guide her. When she spoke, her words were staggered. "I was wrong for that comment at church," she admitted, "and 100 before it." I waited patiently. I used to think shade was a type of strength, that if I kept people beneath me, I could rise above my own shame. Our eyes met, and I gently responded, "Oh, honey, none of us are above shame. We all sit in pews full of proof." She nodded and finally said, "Thank you." Then, deeper, for seeing my sister's baby when I couldn't even see myself. When her tear fell, it landed on her cheek. She quickly wiped it away, as if dignity was on a schedule. "I didn't know about your daughter," she whispered. "Now you do." "I should have." "No," I replied softly. "You couldn't have known. That kind of grief doesn't come with name tags. You have to live through it to understand." I turned and walked to my car, carrying the truth like a sweet burden, much like cornbread cooling on a sundae pot. Ania waved from the back seat. "What took so long, Grandma?" I chuckled, opening the door. Sometimes a little silence needs to clear the way before peace can enter. Laverne stayed behind, leaning against her car, watching. Not bitter or broken, just bare. Later that evening, as I sat on my porch swing, I held the ceremony program in my lap, tracing the letters, Ora Mae Langston, in memory of Ora Danielle. You know something? That was the first time I saw my name and didn't shrink. Didn't worry about if the font was fancy. Didn't wonder if folks would question why I was listed. It just felt right. Ania came outside with one of her little notebooks, eyes gleaming. "Grandma," she said, "I want to start my own scholarship one day. But for art school." "Well then," I smiled, "you better start saving up your lemonade stand money." She giggled, laid her head on my arm. We sat quiet for a while after that, wind brushing through magnolia leaves like it was trying to hush the whole world. And just when I thought the day had given all it could, my phone buzzed. Text message. Number I didn't have saved. But the message. One line. "If forgiveness looked like someone, it'd be you." I didn't respond. Didn't need to. Let the message rest. Let the past rinse itself through legacy. And as the porch light flickered against the full July moon, I whispered her name one more time. This time not out of mourning. This time out of power. Ora Danielle. Girl, we did it. The morning after the banquet, I woke up with my name still echoing through the walls like it hadn't quite figured out how to settle. They'd said it over the mic, printed it bold on the final program, pinned it to the welcome banner near the front. But the loudest version was inside me. I laid there in bed, sunlight crawling across my sheets, one slow inch at a time, remembering everything. My daughter's name printed at the bottom of the scholarship. Laverne's face folding in slow motion confusion, and Naya looking up at me like I glowed. But peace ain't ever been a place I stayed in too long. It's more like a motel room. The heater works, but for some reason the fan always clicks, and you don't unpack your bag even when you sleep a little better. That's where I was. I hadn't even made it to my slippers when the phone rang. "Miss Ora." MMHMM. Lord, who calls at 6:52 in the morning on a Saturday? It's Mayor Jennings' assistant. Just like that. Peace. Pack your bags. Voices that start with titles this early in the day ain't ever calling to say thank you. Yes, baby, I said, sliding into my kitchen chair. What we talking about? There's complications with the scholarship fund. Your presence is requested at the Civic Hall. They're holding an emergency education board meeting at 9 sharp. Emergency? Not crisis, not question, not concern. Emergency. I swallowed whatever blessed sleep I had left. Who called the meeting? Board chairperson Hope Wiley, she said. Lord, not Hope Wiley. Not the same woman who once tried to cancel choir rehearsals because the alto section sounded unshaved. I already felt tension pressing on my temples. I asked, this about the girl we funded or about the fund itself? There was a pause. I'd rather not say over the phone, Miss Ora. Of course. After all these years, folks still think I can't handle the heat I lit candles to start. I set the phone down with a quiet thud and sat still. From the living room, I heard the creak of Ania flipping over in bed, and the sputter of the old coffee pot trying to pull it together. I stared at the light crawling under my back door. The world's always trying to unwrite black women while they're still breathing. I didn't need a prophecy to see where this was going. Sometimes they don't burn your house down with fire. They burn it down with polish. With quiet concerns. With rules you never voted on that somehow always apply just when your shine gets too loud. I stood up, walked to the closet, and pulled out my pressed gray dress with the subtle pearls around the collar. Worn it 5 times in 15 years. Meant for weddings and adversity. And baby, this morning felt like both. An hour later, I pulled up outside the Civic Hall. They had nerve to have a sign that read, "Community thrives on transparency." I was ready to remind them community also thrives on memory. Inside, the room buzzed like bees already building a hive of maybe we should. And some folks feel. Hope Wiley sat at the head of the long table. Her glasses perched on her nose like she was auditioning for a role in How to Erase a Saint with a Smile. She gave me a look that wasn't a smile exactly, but wasn't not a smile either. Oh, Ora, she nodded, like she didn't expect me to show up with both buttons fastened and a spine too straight to be swayed. Morning, I said, choosing calm. 10 other board members circled the room, mostly women. 2 brothers whose eyes danced between their phones and the door, like somebody told them to just be present, not participate. I took the empty seat at the far end. Hope cleared her throat. Well, let's begin. This meeting was called to discuss the structural and legal limitations of the Ora Mae Langston Scholarship Fund, and to address public concerns surrounding neutrality, religious implication, and donor influence over the educational board's programming. Now, let me translate that mess for the family in the back. They was trying to unname me. Can someone explain? I said, eyes landing square on Hope, which of my tides offended your bylaws? Hope gave a rehearsed grin. There's been concern, Ms. Langston, that naming a county-funded program after a highly religious figure could create a bias in the selection process, real or perceived. Humph. Religious figure. Baby, I clean my own bathroom and pay for my own gas. I'm no figure. I'm just a woman who didn't want young girls absorbing the shame I choked down at 17. A younger woman down the table leaned forward. She was new. Pretty girl. Bad wig. I think what Chair Wiley means is, we're trying to maintain boundaries between public works and private donation accolades. I tilted my head. So you want the money, but not the name? No one answered. I folded my hands, calm every word. Wait, you could have called me directly. You could have sat me down and asked me to sponsor anonymously again, like I've been doing for near a decade. But instead, y'all called a public meeting before 9 a.m. like I run a crime ring instead of a community fund. Hope spoke again, tighter now, the mask slipping just a bit. This year's program had higher visibility, and we've received several calls questioning where donation influence stops and civic partnership begins. And what else did those calls say? Hope, I asked, fixing her name down like a placemat I no longer needed. Did they mention anything about dinner rolls, or the color of my skin, or how? I ain't ever been invited to chair this board, though I've funded more girls through it than all of you combined. She flinched at that. And one of the brothers, Darnell something, cleared his throat and finally said something. Y'all, this don't feel right. Hope leaned toward the mic. No one is questioning Miss Langston's impact, just our optics. There it was. Optics. Not facts, not fairness, optics. See, when you a woman like me, black, soft-spoken, and less poked, church-rooted, and publicly modest, they want the service, not the shine. They'll stand and praise the work, long as you stay small enough to box up after. Optics meant, y'all didn't mind when I passed out flyers, sold pies, and quietly sent checks. But now that my name's printed, your board seat feels threatened. I wasn't asking for approval. I was providing opportunity. And if me being visible on paper shakes your system, maybe your system ain't secure. I leaned forward, slow. Like my mama used to when she was dead serious. I started that fund alone. Filled out grant paperwork on my lunch breaks. Missed light bills to cut tuition checks, cried when my Honda broke down on delivery day for backpacks y'all took credit for, and I ain't ever laid my name on it until last week. Hope looked uncomfortable, wished I'd stayed vintage and quaint. And if memory serves, I continued, when y'all borrowed from that fund 3 years ago 'cause your other backers pulled out from that scandal, who cut the check? No one answered. That's what I thought. I stood then. Just enough to let truth stretch to its full height. I won't hold up your optics meeting, I said, quoting her mess back to her. But I want this on record. I offered grace long as I could. But if this room decides to scrape my name off a fund I built, I'll take back every dollar and build a whole new scholarship. One that don't need approval from folks deciding what dignity looks like. Silence dug itself into every corner of that sterile room. And just before I stepped away, I looked right at Darnell. Make sure that made it into your minutes. Then I let the door close itself. Didn't slam it. Didn't run. Just let it settle like a sermon with no choir. Outside, the air was already burnin' with July heat. I blinked into it. And made a decision I hadn't fully formed till right then. I was going to expand that fund. Double the reach. Double the visibility. And I was going to do it without waiting for permission. Back at the house, Aunt Jean was posted on the porch like Judgment Day itself. Hat halfway off. Slippers on. Sippin' something that looked cold and suspicious. You back earlier than I thought, she said. Didn't need a long speech to show him, my yes is not on sale. She pursed her lips like she'd been waiting to say something before she even looked at me. What's going on, really? The board wants to remove my name from the fund. She raised an eyebrow higher than her rent used to be. Oh, so now kindness needs clearance? Apparently, my dignity got too loud. She threw back her drink in one slow gulp. Well, she said, snatching her fan, look like it's time to build our own board then. I chuckled, sitting down beside her. Thought you'd say let it go. Let it go, baby. I ain't no Disney princess. God didn't raise no fool. Sometimes when folks try to shrink you, best response is to expand. And something clicked in me. This wasn't just about pride anymore. It was about structure. About how systems digest your love but spit out your presence. She leaned in, whispering like it was sacred. Make your own banquet next year. Big one. Print them names in gold foil. Rent the nice chairs that don't wiggle. And fund double the girls. I nodded, slow. Already imagining it. Good lighting. Young girls in celebration, not survival. Their parents wiping tears they didn't even realize were sacred. And then it dawned on me. If I did pull out and build my own, would certain girls fall through the cracks in this mess of politics? Would I be breaking the bridge I'd built just to build my name? That evening, I got a call from Joylene. Ma, she said, you okay? I'm better than okay. I'm clear. I heard they trying to phase out your name. What's the move? Forward, I said. Always forward. But even forward, gotta walk with purpose. And I had a decision to make before the weekend ended. Either I let the system edge me out quietly, or I make enough noise that silence itself, start listening. You ever feel your name stretch across two stories at the same time? That's where I was. Half of this town now saw me like I was some kind of church suite celebrity, or a scholarship St. May. Headlines, banquet claps, smiles in the grocery line. The other half was whispering like I rigged the whole thing for my legacy. Don't she go to First Unity? That little fund got her daughters in it. She gonna be president next? I'd heard it all before, but not like this. Not when it involved my child's name in ink. That Saturday evening, after dinner plates had been cleared and Anya gone to bed, I sat at Joylene's kitchen table while she flipped through sticky notes like her fingers was filing court papers. Here's what I'm thinking, she said, jotting down notes determinedly. Transform the scholarship into a foundation, using private funding first. We'll create our own board, shielded from the Educational Commission's interference. I sipped sweet tea, captivated by her graceful movements. Are we really capable? Ma, you built a business from scratch with determination. I can start a fund with just an Excel spreadsheet and a Costco printer. The remarkable Joylene could pull it off, but only if her daughter Laverne joined the fold. There's something truly extraordinary about daughters rising to the occasion. Yet, one name echoed in my thoughts since the morning's meeting, Laverne. She hadn't reached out. In a way, her silence felt like a gift. But even righteous silence can carry a weight. I let it ring 3 times before picking up. Hello? I stepped outside to the porch and leaned against the door. What is it? Laverne, she whispered. The votes are shifting. They're removing my name from the partnership clause and rebranding the fund as Program Unpublished. My stomach clenched. She continued, some believe that removing your name prevents the city from interfering with the foundation's impact. ... And why does it matter? Her voice cracked with uncertainty. They think your visibility and influence equate to influence. They fear any bond to faith could skew the foundation's reach. Seeing in memory of Ora, Danielle provided them with fuel. My throat tightened. Who would use my child's name for leverage? She whispered it softly. They claim you named it after an addict. I felt a void of grief. Not anger, not violence. Just the deep absence from my daughter's life. Tell me the truth. I think it was Everett. He revealed he discussed it with hope. The entire table was filled with people cutting slices from the loaf of bread I had baked, with the memory of my daughter beside me. She had whispered, I'm sorry, but I didn't reply. I just ended the call and sat on the porch, letting the warm air settle around me. It was difficult to comprehend when those who should support your work dismiss your truth. Inside, I could hear Joylene and Ania laughing together as they worked on math problems, but their joy felt distant. That's when an unfamiliar anger bubbled up inside me. It wasn't like me, but perhaps it was time for it. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and let my feet take me forward without a plan, just a sense of purpose cloaked in insomnia. Before I knew it, I was parked outside First Unity Church. It was late, the lights were off, and the place was quiet. I headed straight to the back hall, where Pastor Emmett was reading, his glasses perched on his nose. He was surprised but warm when he saw me. "Ora Mae, is that you knocking on holy doors on a Sunday evening?" he asked. I closed the door behind me, saying, "I need 5 minutes, Pastor." His welcoming smile faded. "Talk to me," he invited. "You've heard about the board's plans?" I asked. He sighed, setting his pen down. "I've heard some things, but I try to keep my focus on the church," he replied. I nodded, feeling a mix of emotions. "So, my daughter's name gets dragged through the mud, and you're just going to wait until Sunday to show you care?" He cleared his throat, saying, "I didn't say I didn't care, Ora." I urged him, "Then speak up. Use your influence. If not, I'll have to find another place to worship." My words seemed to hit home, and his expression softened. "You know, I consider you family," he said, and that's when tears welled up in my eyes. "Family doesn't let silence be louder than the truth," I pointed out. He admitted, "You're right." As I turned to leave, I added, "If you speak up next Sunday, I'll stay." I left before he could say anything more. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went through old grant records, invoices, and photos of every girl we had supported over the years. Small victories and heartfelt notes were tucked away in the margins. I printed 3 names: Madison Hemmings, Charla Reese, and Ella Denise Robertson. I folded them and placed them in my Bible, nestled between Psalms and Proverbs, somewhere between weeping and wisdom. The next morning, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Miss Ora Mae Langston?" the voice asked. "Yes," I replied. "This is Tari Washington from the East County Chronicle. We're covering the scholarship situation and the board's vote reversal. I'd like to hear your thoughts before we publish." I sat down, choosing my words carefully. "I didn't realize my grief had become a headline," I said, letting the silence hang in the air. "It's not just about grief. It's about conversations and opinions. There's a renewed interest in civic funding, and your scholarship has become a focal point for both praise and critique." "Let me guess," I said. "Praise is whispered, and critique comes with quotations." She paused, but with kindness. "May I ask, was Ora Danielle your daughter?" "She was." "And did she struggle with addiction?" "She struggled with being human," I replied. "What would you like readers to know?" she asked gently. I glanced outside. The morning dew still clung to the grass like an apology. That she was 17, that she loved strawberry yogurt and wrote poetry on the backs of receipts, that she made mistakes, and so did the world around her. I fund these scholarships in her name, not because I'm proud of how she passed, but because I refuse to be silent about who she was. Tari paused for a moment. "May I use that, ma'am?" "You just did." When I hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just felt whole, yet a bit empty. Like someone returned a piece of me I never thought I'd see again. The article was published Wednesday, first online. The headline read, "The Quiet Storm of Ora Mae Langston." The subheader, "How One Woman's Grief Became 100 Girls' Future." They quoted me honestly, didn't twist my words. They used a picture from the banquet, showing me laughing at something Joylene whispered. My eyes crinkled, head tilted back. They described me as a churchwoman the city tried to humble, despite calling her to serve when no one else showed up. And just like that, the tide turned. Students commented, "She paid my fees." Teachers, "Her name built our lab equipment room." Even store owners added, "She gave out turkeys in secret every Thanksgiving." Hope Wiley went silent. Mayor Jennings shared that photo on his city blog. True leadership is built in silence first. And I began planning phase 2. Some things don't announce themselves before they change everything. That's the lesson from the week following the article. I finally started sleeping well again. Not long, but deeply. The kind of sleep where your soul stops pacing and lets the night embrace it. Coffee tasted sweeter. The porch swing stopped creaking as if it held a grudge. Even Ania began humming again without realizing it. But quiet doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it's just the part in the story where the tension builds. And the audience doesn't even realize they're holding their breath. I received a letter the following Monday. The envelope was handwritten, last name first, almost too neatly. Langston Ora M. A return stamp from City Hall. Not typed, not printed. Just an ink stamp that looked expansive in an understated way. I opened it slowly. Inside, 2 pages. Folded once, accordion style. As if the sender hadn't quite decided between formality and confession. "Everett." It began with the expected. "I want to sincerely apologize for doubting the integrity of your scholarship structure," he began. It was the typical formal tone, like when the church gets caught in a misstep. Then his tone softened. "The truth, Miss Ora, is that I've always admired your fund." Quietly, perhaps too quietly, over the past 6 months, I had been developing a proposal for a city-endorsed mentorship program, loosely modeled around your work, not as a competitor, but as an extension of government support. However, when your article was published, the mayor's office shifted its focus to your fund, and mine was removed from the agenda. I paused my reading, letting that one word sink in like a heavy weight. Modeled loosely. Not inspired. Modeled. My syllabus, my formatting, my framework. He even included a printout of a proposal page, and I recognized the structure immediately. He had lifted language directly from the private outlines we sent to the board last year. Bullet points Joylene had drafted, quotes I had written, even the part where we phrased the fund's goal, to give Black girls access without the burden of begging. Because worthy shouldn't need rehearsal. He added it to his draft. Word for word. Not a single period changed. Have you ever felt your stomach drop without moving? I walked outside, letter still open, and sat on the porch unblinking. The sunlight hit just right on the dial of shame and fury. How long had he been standing beside me, smiling, while drafting my erasure? I read 3 more lines. He tried to justify it, kindly and carefully. I'd always seen it as a shared cause. I hoped you'd be honored. Honored. I had built that framework with peanut butter jars labeled book fee and Maya's scholarship honorarium. And now I was supposed to feel honored that he had lifted it into a grant pitch without my name. I didn't feel honored. I felt excavated. I folded the letter back, slowly, and called Joylene. She answered on the first ring. I swear if this is about folding laundry, Ma. He stole the structure. What? Everett, my fund structure, my language. He sent me his proposal draft. It's mine. Silence. The kind where your child realizes you're not exaggerating. Then, oh no. Joylene. Nope. Let me handle it. We need timestamps. Document trails. I can show he didn't originate that content. That's our structure. She was already typing furiously, sounding like a court clerk on caffeine. I can call Simone. She's been at the city grants department since COVID. She'll know who filed what and when. Wait. What? Don't make a move yet. You serious? Yes. She sighed heavily. Why? Because if I move messy, they'll act like he was the victim. I heard her almost curse, but she held it back. You need to sit with Aunt Shine. I might. You always do after a storm starts, and you're trying to act like it's just mist. She was right. I needed a voice louder than my silence. Aunt Sheen made brunch the next morning. Fried green tomatoes, grits so firm they could hold a spoon, and eggs that needed nothing but a touch of pride. I handed her the letter while her curlers were still warm. She read it slowly, her mouth slightly twitching. Not quite a frown, not quite surprise. When she finally looked up, she paused for a moment before speaking. Well, damn. Am I overreacting? If anything, you're under. She leaned back thoughtfully. Do you need to call a lawyer? Not yet. Good. Because this calls for prayer and making it public, not just paperwork. You need clarity that doesn't end in court, but in every room he walks into, knowing who he wronged. I'm not trying to ruin him. Then rise above him. Make sure the water he struggles in is holy. She stood up, refilled my tea, and said something that really resonated with me. Listen to me, Ora. I met her gaze. God has never lost a battle, but sometimes he lets you swing first to test your strength. I pondered over it. Later that night, around 10, I received another message. This time, a Facebook DM, from a name I hadn't seen in 12 years. Raina Fuller. One of the very first students I ever supported, back when the fund was just an idea. Her message read, Hey Ms. Ora, I'm in town. Can we talk? It's important. Before I knew it, we were sitting outside a 24-hour diner. Plastic booths, flickering lights, the smell of too much syrup, and broken coffee machines. She looked different now, maybe 30, wearing a pressed shirt, a binder under her arm. Her eyes still had that same spark, just more mature, as if they had been nurtured, but occasionally neglected. Why now? I asked. She gave a bittersweet smile. I got a job offer out west. Head of day programming? 6-figure contract? They needed a reference list from early. I sipped my coffee, letting her explain. I didn't realize until I pulled old files that your name wasn't on a single official document. This town erased you while building rooms with your footprints. Then she pushed the binder across the table. Inside, folders, printouts, screenshots. I found every public record I could. Your fund isn't listed on board archives between 2015 to 2018. Minutes were redacted. Your name marked as anonymous donor, but receipts match wire transfers from your now disconnected credit union. A chill ran through me. You're not done yet, I said. She smiled. I found your name in the trash files from when they transitioned web servers, backup site files, pushed to junk because Hope wanted it rebranded without excess narrative. Her words. I clenched my teeth. You're saying they didn't just block me? They erased me. She nodded. I want to help fix that. What do you want in return? She didn't hesitate. I owe you everything already, she said. I just want to help restore the truth. Truth doesn't just sit still once it shows up. It makes itself at home, opening untouched cabinets, tossing out expired hopes, and calling it housekeeping. That's what the next 2 days felt like. with Raina's folder sitting on my dining room table like an uninvited prophet. Page after page pulled from places I didn't even know still existed. Web archive caches, screenshot threads, a folder labeled legacy _ edited _ final _ v3, which was almost funny if it didn't feel like my life's work pushed off the table and swept into the corner. But the deepest cut, she'd found an email chain buried in a corrupted backup, never meant to be public. Dated 8 months before my name was announced as the fund's official sponsor. From Everett to Hope. CCing to other members. Subject line: repositioning Ora's visibility. I read every line standing up. There were phrases like, strategically minimize emotional branding around Ms. Langston to protect fund neutrality. Consider evaluating renaming options posthumously or following 2024 cycle. We all admire Ms. Langston, but centering her and her late daughter's name may create community narrative risk. Narrative risk? Like I'm a lawsuit waiting to happen instead of a woman who's been sowing thankless grace into this town for 20 years? They were planning to phase me out even while smiling at me across banquet tables. I didn't sit down. Just closed the folder slow and whispered to the floor, "You ever been erased while still breathing? Because now you know." Next morning, around 10:32, someone knocked on my door. The knock was familiar. The kind folks use when they got pride in one hand and apology in the other. I opened the door. It was Everett. He looked younger than shame should make a man look. Gray slacks, ironed too sharp. Shirt too hopeful. A folder in hand? Another damn folder. I didn't invite him in. Just stepped halfway out and waited. He lifted his chin like a man trying to dress up failure. "May I speak to you privately, Miss Ora?" "You already are." He looked down, held out the folder. "This includes my formal resignation from the scholarship board." I crossed my arms. "And I wanted to tell you I'm sorry. Personally, I read the emails," I said. He froze. So that made it real. No denial, no backpedal. "I didn't mean harm," he said, and I swear his voice cracked just a bit. "I'm in structure." I tilted my head. "You structured my name out like it was clutter," I said. "What did you tell yourself? That legacies only belong to people who don't cook for their own grandkids." I believed we were protecting the integrity of the fund. You were protecting comfort. That landed right where it should. I didn't know what else to do in Hope. I cut him off. "You went along, Everett. That's what you did. You let people redefine my work into something safe enough for civic plaques and donor parties." He swallowed. "I'm stepping down, giving you full control of everything I had. And your voice." He blinked. "These people that trust your spreadsheets, will you speak the truth, Everett?" He hesitated less than I anticipated. "Yes," he replied. I took the folder, closed the door quietly, and didn't say goodbye. Sunday arrived with restless energy. My stomach was in knots before brushing my teeth. Joylene picked me up in her Honda, saying the truck felt too casual for litigation. Ania chatted about church muffins and asked if I was nervous. "I'm steady," I assured her. First Unity had never seen such a crowd. Laverne wore muted beige, not red. Emmett approached the pulpit with a spark in his eyes. He began, "Today's sermon is titled, Platform or Pedestal." For 30 minutes, he spoke on the quiet sins of silencing. I let the tears fall. He finished, and a hush enveloped the room. He looked my way and said, "Miss Ora Mae Langston, Would you come forward? Walking toward the altar felt like years of experiences rising within me. He handed me the microphone. I said, God didn't give me a platform for revenge. He gave it to me for revelation. The room erupted in applause. The real climax came Tuesday after a press conference. I stood on the steps of New Crossing High. 2 banners behind me. Legacy can't be rewritten. Introducing the Ora Mae Foundation. Launching Fall 2025. A foundation focused on empowering girls. Aunt Shine had tears in her eyes, and Joylene wore a suit. Everett stood in the back with a sign, "We can't erase what made the way. Grace allows you to sit in the crowd. When you understand who you were never meant to overshadow." 3 news stations showed up. One asked, "Why now?" I smiled. They knew what I realized. Being called a broke church lady wasn't an insult. It was a prophecy. I broke chains. I broke silence. I broke cycles. Broke, but never bankrupt. Church, but never small. Lady, but built like a whole movement. The press conference made it real. The quiet celebration that followed, that's what made it complicated. For the first time, people were calling my house to say thank you instead of ask for help. I answered 3 calls that morning before my tea even steeped. One was a father of a girl I never met. He said, "You ain't just paying for books, ma'am. You're buying my daughter out of survival mode." Then hung up without saying thank you. Joylene texted before I got up. Fundraiser hit $14, $238, all in 2 days. Raina was managing donations. Aunt Shine was having a Facebook field day. Y'all bet not ever forget who Miss Ora Mae is, because she'd been wholly through humiliation and didn't quit when you stopped clapping. I hadn't even caught my breath when he knocked. Tuesday afternoon. Steady. Polite? I opened the door. Marcus. Khaki suits, fitted polo, and a folder in hand. Cleared his throat. "Ma, we gotta talk." Now see, Marcus doesn't talk. He complains, suggests, or reports problems. But when he starts with, "We gotta," I know what's coming. "I didn't bring a chair for guilt," I said, backing into the living room. "So if that's what you carried in, you can sit on the front step." "Ma." He hushed and spit it out. He sat in silence. Opened the folder. Inside, news clippings, photos, online comments, all printed like battlefield maps. "I'm proud of you," he started, but not used to watching my mama's pain become a headline. That's when I went still. He looked up. Eyes not angry yet, just wary of being honest. "This story, about the scholarship, the overdues, that reporter quoting you, you're letting the world into a part of you that's ours, not theirs." I leaned forward. Elbows on knees, voice low. "Baby, tell me the truth doesn't lowercase me. It makes the light shine where healing happened." He shook his head. "You're blaming yourself. I do this for you, but you don't need me to make excuses for you." "I don't need excuses. Everyone else does. I don't need your lipstick to fill me with power, nor your pain from my past. Your name only gets stinked after what I've done. I am better now. I don't need you anymore." He grabbed the folder. "You're nothing important to me now." "I can't believe that's true." "I am. Your anonymous check and the memo." "I don't need your money." "Thank you, but you already have everything you need. Today, they know you. They need you more than ever." I walked over to him. kissing the crown of his head. I want your name to be power, not pain. I don't want my past to live behind you. But that day should be forgotten, because that girl who was meant to be here never left. It keeps going on. Today's successes aren't for you. They'd be lost without your soul. I just want you to know that what I did in there was for you and not for me. He looked up and smiled. I never imagined I'd do it. Your story's not of an easy survivor. It's about the ones who didn't fight back. I can't help you keep the door open, but I can keep it closed. Letting my soul find its peace, I realize that sometimes legacy doesn't need a grand introduction. It can simply arrive, quietly, when you're almost too weary to keep going. She came on a Thursday, unannounced. Just a gentle, rhythmic knock, as if aware of the sorrow even before I opened the door. I hadn't expected Janelle Reed to look the way she did after all these years. The last time I saw her, she was 17, tall and slender, always glancing over her shoulder as if someone might tell her she didn't belong. But she wasn't that girl anymore. Standing on my porch in a fitted blazer, jeans that said I work and walk, and a tote bag with straps that seemed to carry wisdom. Her face reflected knowledge and a distance born from learning too young how systems can deceive. Miss Ora, she greeted me, smiling through what seemed like tears. I leaned against the doorframe. Janelle read, You remember me. I never forgot. She handed me a manila envelope. Everything I took from your fund, I've multiplied and returned. I never asked for repayments. I know, I just didn't have the words to thank you properly before. We didn't embrace immediately. She was waiting for permission, and I was catching my breath. But then I stepped forward, arms open. Slowly. She melted into my embrace, like recalling a memory with her entire being. You saved me back then, she whispered. You just borrowed strength until your own arrived. She pulled back, her eyes now glistening, and said, They tried to make me a statistic. You made me a structure. Then she spoke the words that surprised me. I want to speak for you. I blinked. What? The town forum. Friday night. They're voting to block the foundation from using any city-run spaces, claiming we don't meet civic cohesion standards. I chuckled. They mean they're afraid Joy has a black name and a backbone. She nodded. They expect you to go in there alone again. That week, my sleep was restless, and I hardly ate. Raina came by to help Joylene prepare mock questions for the town forum. Aunt Jean sent over a lemon pound cake she promised was baked with holy resilience. Marcus kept his distance at first, still tender from our last conversation. But on that Friday, at 4:08 p.m., he showed up. Blue shirt, crooked tie, program draft in hand. Thought you might want to see what they're printing, he said, softly. What does it say about me? He paused. Founder, organizer, catalyst. I smiled. Still afraid of what pain reveals? He took a quiet breath. Not anymore. Just worried I didn't support you when you needed it the most. I touched his shoulder. Support doesn't always need words. Sometimes it just needs to be there. And baby, you just were. The forum hall was filled with that unique tension only small towns can create. Everyone seated like a candle waiting for a spark. Hope Wiley sat 3 rows back, glasses low as if justice needed a closer look. We were seated with the special motion group, signaled by the white tag on my chest that read, Ora M. Langston, Ora D. Foundation, founder. Janelle was beside me in a navy dress and low heels that didn't try to impress, just exist with intention. The moderator spoke. then called the first speaker. A man in a beige sports coat walked up. The foundation conflicts with a politically neutral education space, he said. Too faith-tied, too emotionally weighted. This isn't the long-term stable model needed for the county. I gripped my pen. Didn't speak yet? Let the heat build honest. A mother stood next. I was grateful last year when Miss Ora bought my girl books. But this expansion stuff, the interviews, the press, it's too loud. Makes it feel like we owe her, not our kids. Folks nodded. Janelle squeezed my hand under the table. That's when Marcus stood. No sign request? No clipboard. Jested like his feet finally agreed with his blood. You don't owe her, he said. We do. Room quieted. His voice shook once, then held. Y'all didn't see her come home with bleed-through hands 'cause chemicals too harsh. You didn't watch her trade new shoes for a laptop some other girl needed. You didn't watch her carry scholarship apps thicker than sermons and staple them on a budget. We owe her. Someone whispered amen. He continued. She didn't do this foundation to be famous. She did it so somebody's daughter could read poetry on Thursday nights without wondering if the heat got cut at home again. That's when Janelle rose, not slow, not timid. I've hid behind silence for a decade, she said, because I thought my failure defined me. But Miss Ora gave me back something I didn't even know I had. She looked out at the board. Y'all want to know if this foundation is dangerous? She asked. It is. The room gasped quiet. She smiled. It's dangerous to the idea that healing gotta be hidden. That dignity needs degrees. That nobody from below the poverty line grows into a professor. Then she dropped it. I'm ranked 3rd in my field nationwide. And I'm here because a broke church lady whose name they tried to bury saw me before I saw my own name on anything. Room fell still. Then the mayor quietly lowered his folder. The moderator blinked, cleared his throat. Motion passed. 9-1 vote. Public access granted to the foundation, citywide. I didn't clap. Just looked up and whispered, I hope you smiling, baby girl. You always liked proving people wrong. An hour later, as folks filed out, a woman from the board leaned close and whispered, They're naming a room after you. Quietly. Tomorrow. I blinked. A room? She nodded. The Science Wing renovation. Technology lab. First one in the county with AI-based student access. Grant written without your name, but funded by a donor who specifically requested. It's called the Ora D Lab for Unseen Geniuses. I cried in the middle of that hallway. They tried to stop it, but the shadow turned into a spotlight. A week later, kids were coding. And a black girl in pink sweatpants designed a chess app in a new lab. A plaque honored Ora D, who was remembered. A girl asked if I was the church lady from the stories, and I confirmed. She mentioned I almost got deleted, and I replied I saved myself by showing up. Tuesday felt like a house, not asking anything. With the funds stable and kids using the lab, Joylene brought muffins and paperwork. And Ania had a sunflower-shaped flash drive. Anaya asked me to proofread a scholarship application for the Ora ID Foundation. She didn't ask if it was okay because she didn't want me to think she expected it. Ania felt legacy was too big, like earning her last name. I told her her name is a gift, and she's extending it. She recalled people saying I didn't deserve the weight I carried. I said they didn't know what survival looks like in pearls. But she does and will wear it peacefully. Later, there was a knock. low and rhythm-bound. Mr. Harmon visits with wildflowers and a letter from Allison Samuels, revealing Ora Danielle's past and a flash drive of memories. Ora's poem, I See Mama's Hands in the Mirror Now, is mentioned. The narrator feels supported by Mr. Harmon's presence. Later, they discover a new program mimicking the Ora D Foundation. Joylene offers to handle it, but the narrator decides against legal action for now. I'm going to wait and see if they use them as tools or trophies, she said. Her daughter frowned. Still too forgiving, Ma. Not forgiveness, clarity. Grace isn't weakness. It means I see you fully without looking away. They should have asked first. Maybe they don't know how. Later that evening, she sat on the porch with Anya, who was assembling a robot kit from the tech lab. Will I get into the program? The one named after you? She watched those small fingers threading wire. You've been part of this since you first asked why I worked so long if nobody noticed? I said that. You did. Was I rude? You were prophetic? A warm breeze arrived, strange for autumn. She thought about every room they'd tried to push her from, rooms she'd filled with service. They say legacy lives in buildings, she murmured. But mine. Ania paused. Where does yours live? Wherever a girl breathes easy, knowing her mother's secondhand pride at school meetings doesn't define her. Grandma, when do you rest? Silence settled between them. Ania leaned against her arm as the robot blinked softly and the porch light hummed Firefly Elo against darkness. Maybe tonight, she whispered. The package arrived with no return thrown paper, string, as if lost in time. Inside, a vintage floral tin, holding a thick envelope, USB stick, and one Polaroid. The photo stopped her breath. Ora Danielle, 17. Standing before brick, one shoe untied, eyes storm-ready, not smiling, not afraid. On back, for fated words, trying to come home. She sat motionless, then played the recording. Static fuzzed before her daughter's voice emerged deeper, scratchier, real. Her heart cracked open. I wrote something. For after, don't read it aloud. Read it to yourself when you forget who birthed this movement. The title, I See Mama's Hands in the Mirror Now. She read every word aloud to herself alone. To every unseen girl finding her way between being a burden and a legacy. Tears soaked the countertop, not from grief, but a sense of arrival. Her final words, if I didn't make it, let my life hold open the door for those who will. I emailed Joylene to use this poem for the graduation ceremony blessing. On Saturday, the multi-purpose room was filled with students. Mothers, aunties, grandmothers, and city officials. The first graduating class funded by the ORD Foundation included 8 girls, 2 boys, and 1 non-binary student. The ceremony began warmly with the choir humming stand. Marcus spoke, acknowledging his mother's story, saying, she wasn't rewriting the past but farming it. He realized the students were carrying her forward. After his speech, he hugged me tightly. Joylene joined us, and I handed her the ledger, making her the legal successor to the foundation. Because a story gets heavy if one voice has to tell it forever, I said. The final slide read, if I didn't make it, let my life hold open the door for the ones who will. Silence filled the room. That night, Mr. Harmon walked me back to the porch as the sun set. Joylene returned home with half a lemon cake tray, leaving Marcus to clean up. I stayed behind, just me, harming the ever-squeaking porch swing. He placed an envelope on my lap without a name. I teased him about it, opening it to find a handwritten note from him with his name below. The middle part said, "If the legacy is safe and you're finally free to rest, maybe it's time to think about loving someone who built your house from the dirt." I laughed. I didn't say anything for a while. Then, watching the moon across the sky, we shared a laugh. Later, Joy Leanne sent a message. Collins Hall confirmed the naming rights. The Ora D Reflection Room, with its glass porch and wooden table, was for students to rest and worship like you wanted. As the stars appeared, I realized that they wanted less of me. After decades carrying plates, names, wounds, paperwork, humble apologies, and secret fundraising letters, my name carried me. In the reflection room, I watched as Ania, sitting on the porch, steps softly playing her music, hummed along while typing something on her laptop. She looked up to me. "Grandma, how come you never ask what's inside? Why did you build this place?" I never wanted it to be fancy, just meant for people like us, who wanted to rest, feel safe, and remember. After a while, I asked her, "Why do you call Etora D?" "It's just from the name. In the reflection room, we want it to be like you were here for us, too." Back on the porch, Ania was diligently working on her slides. She had been accepted into the city's junior mentorship program and expressed a desire to speak to other 12-year-olds, hoping to inspire them to learn science before they ever feel shame. When she showed me her final slide, it simply read, "Your legacy starts the day you pick up peace instead of proving." Ania, age 12. At that moment, I felt a sense of clarity and knew deep inside that I no longer needed to preach. The teachings had taken root in every girl I had mentored, and now they were finding their voices. That Sunday, Mr. Harmon brought over a wooden box, leaving it silently on the porch with a smile. Inside was a simple gold ring engraved with the words, "Still room for joy." I didn't say yes immediately. There was no rush. He gently kissed my wrist, sat beside me, and said, "I ain't asked for forever. I just asked for now." And in that gentle moment, everything felt just right. Mid-October winds blew golden leaves across the porch rail, settling softly without questions. Later that week, a letter arrived addressed to the lady who keeps us from disappearing at the Ora D Foundation. Enclosed was a drawing from a 9th grader named Josie, depicting a stick figure version of herself, holding hands with an image resembling my picture from the lobby wall. Underneath, she wrote, "I didn't know a black lady who looked like my auntie could have a lab named after her. Now I do." That, right there, is the essence of legacy, not in headlines or plaques, but in a girl envisioning herself with a future. That evening, Joylene called me into the kitchen, handing me a file with her voice cracking. They nominated Ania for the city's Young Advocate Award. I blinked in quiet surprise. "She accepted?" I asked. Joylene replied, "She told them she had the best mentor and didn't want her name misspelled again." We laughed heartily and joyfully. After dinner, I returned to the porch, the swing creaking like an old song. Ania sat, cross-legged at my feet, humming a tune from her slideshow, while Mr. Harmon read from a book, interspersing stories not found in the print. Joylene hummed from the kitchen, and the light cast a gentle glow on everything. I looked up and realized that just like that, I wasn't tired anymore. I closed my eyes and whispered her name once more. Danielle, without any ache, just light. Then I turned to you, the one who stayed with me through this entire message, holding the silence as I crafted each word. I thank you deeply and sincerely. Remember this. You don't need a building to be a cornerstone. You don't need permission to preserve your name. You don't need their applause to validate your offering. All you need is your voice and a porch to share it on. If this story passed your spirit like the wind before a front door opens, if it reminded you of someone you lost or someone you're trying to become, then don't leave quiet. Subscribe. Comment. Tell me what part gave you back something you didn't know you needed. I got more where this came from. Because, baby, on Tales of Ora Mae, every name they tried to erase becomes the title of the next story.